Hello, welcome back. We're going to pay some more attention to the obvious today. It's been a theme lately here. The complications that we introduce into life, needless, every single one of them needless because truth is obvious. Our reality, who and what we are, where we are, all of that is completely obvious. And we refuse to look at it. We refuse to accept it. Not flattering, but that's where we find ourselves here. So if you're new to A Course in Miracles, don't expect to be flattered. I mean, don't expect to be flattened necessarily either, but don't expect to be flattered and told that all of these delusional wanderings are perfectly okay. Your own experience tells you that they're painful. Your own experience shows you that when you lash out in blame and judgment at someone else, you don't feel good. It's our experience here in the world as we identify with the ego that brings us pain and suffering and anxiety because we've wronged our brother, so we think. We feel guilty because of what we've done, so we think. And we find ourselves right here looking at this series of teachings and practices called spirituality, of which this course is only one outward manifestation. It is one door of many. There are many doors. So here you are interested in this one, whether you are brand new to this or whether you're just checking it out, or whether you've been practicing this material for 30 or 40 years. And some of you have. Welcome, wherever you find yourself. We're going to take a look at demonstrating the obvious to ourselves here. Now, just a minute ago, we talked about don't expect to be flattered here. This is not, it's not flattering to take a look at our illusions, is it? It's not designed to be. The reality is we're confused. In fact, the title of this section that we're working on is called The Confusion of Pain and Joy. And when you think about it, when you honestly, deeply allow yourself to think about it, of course we're confused about pain and joy. We're constantly getting in our own way. When we identify as an individual, when we identify as a separate being, cut off and separate from other beings, when we think that there's been a separation in the first place, we run that to its logical yet insane conclusion. And we find ourselves enmeshed in a whole lot of drama. That's the PG version. You can use a different word for drama. It starts with an S. That's where we appear to find ourselves, is wrapped up, caught up in all of that, when the obvious is that it's not true and we can just let it go. You can let it all go right now. See, our problem here is not that what our inner teacher says isn't true. It is true. So our major malfunction, if you want to see it that way, is that we don't want to listen to our inner teacher. What our inner teacher says to us is true. We simply don't want to listen. That's our problem. We think we can do better on our own. Well, how is that working out for you? Now, you may have a lot of money, no problem. You may have excellent physical health, no problem. You might be in a very happy, loving relationship. All right, right, no problem. But this happiness, when we do not listen to our inner teacher, is fleeting. It does not last. And you know what else doesn't last? This. This doesn't last. It's an illusion. It's not who we are. And our inner teacher's telling us this. Our inner teacher is teaching us some of the very basic sounding and obvious sounding ideas from A Course in Miracles. Truth is true. Yeah, God is. Your will and God's will are one. You are God's will. Ideas leave not their source. Oh, please capitalize the S. And you are an idea, the thought of God, who's never left our source. Where are you? Our inner teacher is telling us this all of the time. Another thing that he tells us and attempts to demonstrate to us, show us, is that to give and to receive are one in truth. Why? There is no separate other. There's only perfect oneness. When you forgive your brother, whom do you forgive? Yes, you forgive yourself. So the painful converse also applies. When you condemn your brother, whom do you condemn? Yeah, there's no separate other. We think that we have to lash out here in the world. We think we have to judge. We think we have to blame. And sometimes we think we have to play the victim. All of it's completely destructive to our peace of mind, yet all of it can be let go. That's part of the beautiful message of the Holy Spirit, our inner teacher. We can let all this go. We just have to listen to our inner teacher's guidance because the call goes out to us 24/7. Why? The Holy Spirit is not separate from you. It's not some great mysterious thing outside of you. There's no mystery. God is. What is implicit in that is only God is. So, what's the great mystery that we're so in love with here in the world and that we cherish? We're cherishing our own confusion, aren't we? Not flattering, but that's where we find ourselves. What mystery? There is only perfect oneness. What we're doing here on the spiritual path is we're removing the barriers to our awareness of that. It is as though we've erected a wall or a fence or a gate, or we've hung a veil over reality so that we are unable to see it. And we're removing this barrier. Truth is true. It has always been there. We're the ones that have cast a shroud over our eyes so that we don't see, and we run off and we think we're doing really well sometimes. I mean, you could have all the money in the world and hot sex and a beautiful home and a second home on Lake Como or something, and a third home on Santorini, and a fourth home in downtown Manhattan, and all of the toys of the world that you want. Yet happiness here in the world doesn't last. There is no world. Lesson 132 of the workbook. The lesson there is not that there is no world, but the commentary there is perfectly apparent in one of the paragraphs. Lesson 132 is I loose the world from all I thought it was. In other words, I release the world from all I thought it was. With an exclamation point at the end of the sentence, Jesus tells us in the commentary for lesson 132, there is no world. This is the central teaching of A Course in Miracles. So, of course, nothing in the world lasts. What world? So, we're simply confused here. And it's very important. In fact, it's imperative here on the path that we recognize that and that we ask our inner teacher for help. The Holy Spirit will help us differentiate pain and joy. We're confused. Our teacher helps us differentiate the two so that we may choose joy instead of pain. And if you don't know what the difference is, how can you possibly be expected to act accordingly? You can't, can you? So you ask your inner teacher for assistance, which your inner teacher will happily give. That's what your teacher is here to do, is to help you differentiate between pain and joy, between light and dark, between love and fear, between God and the ego, between truth and illusion, however you wish to characterize this one choice in words. So we're invited to ask our inner teacher for guidance. When we ask our inner teacher for help, we're setting aside the ego. We are. Think about it. It's very powerful. It's a very powerful way to set aside the ego, which is the point of all spirituality. In fact, we're doing that when we ask our inner teacher for help. We're saying that my little way of arranging and manipulating all phenomena here in the world isn't working out. People don't do what I want them to do. No kidding, right? The weather doesn't do what I want it to do. The world doesn't revolve around me. I know. What world doesn't revolve around any of us? Not a single one of us is the individual center of the world. Number one, there are no individuals, separate individuals, and there's no world. So if you're hearing these ideas for the first time, yes, expect resistance. It's the ego that's resistant to these ideas. Of course it is. Expect that. Expect that on the path. Understand that the practical application of the ideas here in A Course in Miracles is the way that we learn. It's important to have some kind of intellectual understanding, but I wouldn't overestimate that. It's okay to not have any clue what this is saying. I mean, really, there's nothing to stop you from putting these ideas into practice before you have what you consider to be a firm intellectual grasp on them. This is not confusing, and Jesus is not hiding the ball here. He's not hiding anything from us. There's no mystery. He's telling us the same things over and over again so that we begin to appreciate it, so that we begin to practice. And when you put these ideas into practice, that's when you prove to yourself that they're true. I won't prove anything to you. Here in the world, we demand proof. Well, what happens here on the spiritual path is by your practical application of these ideas, you prove them to yourself. You demonstrate the obvious to yourself. You show yourself. And it is you showing yourself because remember, your inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, is part of your mind. It's a part that you can choose to listen to instead of the ego. We demonstrate the obvious to ourselves, and only as we do it does it really come experientially to become obvious. So we can say these things and read these things, all of these ideas, all of the time, but it's not until we begin to actually put them into practical application in every situation of daily life that we begin to really learn how true they are. And that is where some real power lies. You want momentum, so to speak, on your spiritual path. Prove the obvious to yourself. And if you're unsure how, ask. You have help. We all have the help of our inner teacher in this. And for that matter, you have the help of external teachers as well that only appear external. That's just a word that we use. When something lands for you that is said on this video, it's not Reverend Tomas Garza that's speaking to you. Understand that. It is your inner teacher that's speaking to you. When you're inspired to practice, when you're inspired to forgive the Son of God, when you're inspired to forgive yourself, in other words, it's your inner teacher that's speaking to you. It takes many forms, some of which appear to be outside of you, but guess what? There's nothing outside of you. There's nothing outside our mind. There is only perfect oneness. So we invite our inner teacher to guide us. Now, here in the world, there are many spiritual teachers. I'm simply one of a multiplicity. Really, there are a lot. So, to that extent, if you have comments or questions along the path, that is perfectly natural because what we're talking about here with spirituality is self-inquiry. So to the extent that you have comments or questions, please feel welcome to leave them here. And if you're just starting out and you figure that, yeah, maybe I should know this already, yeah, that's the question to ask. If it seems like a question that's basic to you, if you feel that it's too basic and that you should know it, that's the question to ask, because I guarantee you'll be benefiting not just yourself, but some people that have been studying this material for 25 years, experienced students too. Everyone benefits from every question, especially the really basic ones, because as we discover here on any spiritual path, including this one, the repetition of ideas is necessary. We're stubborn adult learners who are confused about pain and joy, and we need help. So, to that extent, the more repetition of these basic, obvious ideas, which we're to go forth and prove to ourselves, the more repetition, the better, because we need it. It might be the 5,000th time that you hear the same idea that it really clicks. And won't you be glad that you heard it? Questions are more than welcome. And so too are your subscriptions. So thank you to all of you who have recently joined. The subscription button is right here in the corner. That's that red arrow. Go ahead and click that. We'd love to have you join us. What you're getting here are several videos a week, and consistency, right? We need it on the path. And we're going through the text of A Course in Miracles, which is several hundred pages long. And yes, it's saying the same thing. It's repeating the same ideas many times in many different ways. Why? There appear to be many of us, so some phrasing works for some people really well, and a different phraseology will work on a different day for someone else. So we repeat the ideas in many different outward forms. The only difference is the outward form. The content, the essence of it is exactly the same. It's the same idea in different words on a different day. And the hope is that today may be the day where you're truly inspired to practice, to demonstrate the obvious to yourself, that there is no separation of any kind ever, anywhere, and you are one with God, as are we all. Thank you very much for joining.